which is by Eats by Amber. She's a local professional chef, just launched out on her own a year ago, so support her. She's also, I think part of one of her services is she's a private chef. I'm not sure how that works. If I could afford her, I'm sure my wife would just keep her on retainer somehow. But definitely reach out to her and find out more about her services. She does a great job. And of course, we do this every month. We encourage you guys to share your experience here on social media. And so what we ask you to do is to snap a picture at some point, tag the event, use the hashtag, and then we'll put whoever shares it, we'll put them into basically a bucket and pull out one of you to receive a free ticket to come to one of these in the future. And so it's ironic that Jessica with the Burger Bus won, and then she texted me this morning and said she couldn't make it. So somebody's in Jessica's seat. I don't know who it is. But anyway. So she shared a post, talked about how she was proud to be here, and we put it in, and we see who wins. So I encourage you guys to do that while you're here. Of course, today, I'll introduce Tom in a minute. I'm excited that he's here. I'm sure he's honored to have you guys here to show support and hear his story. But if you want to find us or Tom online, you can look at these social handles, Tom Cox Design. And you can tweet something like this: I never knew how much I didn't know about brand identity. Thanks to Tom, my brand is now having an identity crisis. Help. So anyway, something like that. It doesn't have to be exact, obviously. All right. Without further ado, I want to introduce to you guys Tom Cox, who has kind of been a close colleague, but also a friend to our entire office for several years now, both professionally and personally. We've gotten to know him. Tom spent 9 years at Coca-Cola. 8 felt like 9. Yep. He didn't say that, I did. He started out at Reinhardt and was majoring in fine art, and then transitioned to UGA to focus on advertising. And so he's got a pretty fascinating background. He's got a wife and 2 kids. He's been in Cherokee County for 20 years? 23 years. A lot of knowledge about brand identity, design, graphic design, even down to language that's attached to a brand, like taglines and a brand story. And so I think you guys are going to love this story. We're going to try to pull out as much as we can today. But for those of you who are brand new, we're going to do something we've never done before. I'm going to let Tom explain it, but we're going to take maybe 10 minutes and do something that we've never done, and it'll explain the stuff that's at your seat, and then Tom and I will sit down and chat. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, man. Good to me.
Okay, so everybody has a Sharpie, some cards in front of you.
You may not want it, but give it a try.
Does this help?
No? Yeah.
Okay.
Whoa. No?
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to do a quick little exercise. And this is actually kind of part of the process I use with any new brand identity client that I sit down with. And that is, we have to figure out what your brand is all about. Because in today's market, today's world, the people you're trying to reach have that long to make a decision. You've got to stand out, you've got to be focused, and you've got to be clear about what you're communicating. So this is kind of a take on some of the exercises that I use to help my clients figure out, okay, what's that focus, what's that message? So since everybody here either comes from a different brand or you're also, working on brands for people, I thought we can't do it for everybody. So let's just pick one brand that everybody knows or thinks they know and see what happens. So the brand today that we're going to talk about is Coca-Cola. So what I would like for everyone to do, I'm going to just take a couple minutes. I want you to write down 3 different words that you think best describes the brand Coca-Cola. Don't share among yourselves yet. Keep it to yourself for now. We're going to see what happens here. And just to be clear, it's the brand Coke, it's the drink, not the company.
One per card or all?
It doesn't matter, whatever you want to. Or are you going to play?
I'm going to play.
Did you already
Can't not play. No. I have not seen the answers.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, everybody got 3 words? All right, so here's where the fun begins. Somebody tell me what you got.
Red.
Red? All right. Anybody else?
Refreshing.
Refreshing.
Worldwide.
Okay. Anybody else?
Public.
Sharing.
Sharing, yeah.
Positive.
All-American.
Classic.
Classic, okay. Sugar. Fun.
Active.
Yeah. Anybody else? What you got? Huh?
Tradition.
Tradition.
Bubbly.
Yeah. Okay.
Childhood.
Huh?
Childhood.
Childhood. Okay. What you got, sir?
Soda.
Soda fun. What you got, Ben?
Cold.
Cold. Okay. All right. So I took from the quote unquote official brand positioning statement, because this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to position the brand in the market. So the main words pulled from that are, it's a beverage. It's not chewing gum. It's not, it's not anything. It's a beverage. It's worldwide, which means it's not all American, because they're trying to reach everyone. Because, China's a big market now, so all American won't work. But worldwide means diversity of who we're trying to reach. So those two are pretty just, that's just kind of the framework for what they're doing. Where they get into how they communicate the brand is in the emotions. And that is refreshment, which would go with cold, rejuvenation, and enjoyment. Next time you see a Coke commercial, think about how much they're pushing enjoyment, rejuvenation, and refreshment. It's all about that. If it doesn't help that, they don't talk about it. That's what you have to remember when you're trying to apply this to your brand, to anybody else's brand, is that message has to be laser focused. Because like I said, people today only have that much time to make a decision. And we'll probably talk about it more later. It is an emotional decision. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Appreciate that. All right.
We're gonna try this one more time. I love it. Stay on. It's a good time. Okay. So if you wouldn't mind holding this.
Yeah.
And I'll just scream. So I think it'd be good for us to maybe start off with a quick lightning round.
Sure.
That's cool.
Sure.
This first one might be a little risky.
Okay.
I'm just going to ask a couple of lightning round questions. Just shoot from the hip. First thought. Sound good?
Sure.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
I mean, it's not being recorded. It's
Tough
okay.
one.
History or future?
History.
History. Digital or analog?
Digital.
Okay. In a battle between Superman and Batman,
Superman.
forgetting the movie. Favorite decade of music?
Huh. That's too tough for me. 30s to 80s.
Favorite comfort food?
Ugh. Chocolate.
Chocolate. Favorite trilogy, movie trilogy?
Ugh. Star Wars came to mind first.
Yeah. Mac or PC?
Mac.
All right, the last one is
In fact, Mac only.
okay.
Like since 1989, only Mac.
Really?
But yeah.
It's Today's lunch circuit is provided to you by Apple.
Yeah.
Best decade for brand design.
Decade. Probably, it's probably now.
Really? Okay. All right. So jump in, Tom, and tell us a little bit about you, your family, your background for people who probably don't know.
I was born and raised here in Georgia. I grew up in Alpharetta. As Jonathan said, I went to Reinhardt and then UGA, where I met my wife Connie. And we have two great kids. One is just graduated Georgia State, about to get his master's at UGA. And my daughter is about to start her college career at Berry. And they're both great kids, very talented, and both studying finance and economics.
Really?
Yes.
How did you manage that?
We're not sure because Connie was an art major as well, so we don't know what happened.
Maybe that's finance economics in response to
It could
art.
be, it could very well be a
The whole starving artist kind of thing?
subconscious decision to have a more structured life.
They're not here for testimony, are they?
They're not.
All right.
That wasn't allowed.
That's on purpose. So you've lived in Cherokee County for 23 years.
23 years. Yes.
So why Cherokee County? Why Woodstock? And then why have you not moved?
Well, to be honest, when we first moved here, had been married about a year. I was working already downtown at Coke, so we were looking something close to the highway for the commute and something we could afford. So Cherokee County offered that option for us at the time. And to be honest, we thought we'd be here a few years and then either move closer into Atlanta, or maybe more toward Alpharetta, or whatever. But as time went along and kids came along, of course, all your plans go out the window. So we've been here ever since. And to be honest, since about 08, 09, when Woodstock started just kind of starting its boom, now it's like, we're actually now at a point now where we could move, and we don't want to. So,
Why is that, you think? Is there
Well,
one reason?
I wouldn't know if there's one reason per se. I mean, there's probably a lot of different reasons. Mainly, it's got everything we want, you know? I mean, it's got the entertainment, the restaurants, family, friends. But, I mean, it's not the dead little railroad town that it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
even.
Right.
So,
So you've been here long enough to see that whole facade
Oh, yeah.
change
yes.
for the better?
Yeah.
So what was your favorite restaurant in 2008 or 9?
What was our favorite restaurant? It was nothing around here.
Really?
Nothing around here
Yeah.
back then. I mean, maybe Longhorn or Chili's.
Right. A franchise store.
Yeah, franchise.
Well, let's talk a little bit more like how you made it through some of your career. So, precursor to that, thinking back as a child, like what were you really good at growing up, and maybe what were you not good at?
I was good at getting in trouble. I drew all the time, like everybody, every designer, every person who does this. That's their story.
Including in class and everything, like doodling?
Everywhere. Church, school, whatever, trips, yeah, all the time.
So what were you not good at?
Math.
Finance.
Yes.
Finance and economics?
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess, like, thinking about
Well,
that.
let me just say
Yeah,
this.
sure. Go ahead.
In elementary school, there were several times that my teacher would separate me from the class. And one of them even brought a refrigerator box to put over my desk to keep me separate from the class, because my attention span was not there.
Okay, so how many times did that happen? The refrigerator box?
Refrigerator box just
Once.
but several different teachers would separate me.
So the class is happening, the refrigerator box goes over your desk.
Oh, yeah.
What do you do when you're in the box?
Daydream, draw.
So at this point, she's not punishing you, she's enabling you.
Well, yeah.
So do you accredit all of your design success to that teacher?
Should have.
That's interesting. My kids are homeschooled, so I'm gonna have to tell my wife that idea.
Yeah.
Just put them in boxes and let them go.
You might get arrested now.
Okay, so take that and then lead us up to professional career. So you leave UGA,
Yep.
and then what are your plans? Where do you end up?
My plans leaving UGA was that I was going to walk into the top advertising agencies in Atlanta, and they were just going to say, here's your corner office. This was before Mad Men, but I was going to be Don Draper. That was I had it in my head, that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to make TV commercials, all that. And of course, several months later, no offers, nothing. People saying, well, you should probably think about going back to school to get this, this, or this. And I'm like, I just paid for school, I can't do that. So I finally got a job at a local trade magazine publisher in a department that did all the promotion for the ad sales for their magazines. And we're talking glamorous magazines like Container News and Air Cargo News, that type of stuff.
Very trendy.
Yes, I was so excited. But so I worked there for 2 years, and that's actually where I learned to use the Mac for graphic software and all that stuff. Because I came out of Georgia with no experience in that whatsoever. So I graduated at the end of '89.
So you're there for a couple of years,
2 years.
and then what's next?
Well, I think I told you before that I was making practically no money. It was very, very bad. I think my starting salary was $12,500 a year. So it was bad. We were engaged, about to get married. She was about to graduate. And I was considering changing careers because I was like, this is not working. I can't get married and help provide for my future family's life. So I started looking into changing my career to sports management. And I wrote a letter to every major League Baseball general manager in the country. And hand letter, wrote it. They actually helped me address them. Sent those out and just asking the question, I'm considering doing this. Do you have a school you recommend for a master's degree, or do you have an opening? And I have a stack, still to this day this tall, of all the people who wrote me back from all these Major League Baseball teams with their official letterhead. Most of them are written on a typewriter. And they gave me advice and said, try this school, or I got a form letter. Some of them were actually I think I showed you at the time, I got the letter I got back from the New York Yankees was from Brian Cashman, who is now their general manager, but at the time he was like somebody's assistant or something. And he wrote back a very just personal letter and said, here's what I would recommend, after that, good luck. So I was going down that road, and then I got the interview at Pitt, and everything changed.
So there for 8 years.
Yep.
And then, so there's an interesting story you've told that maybe not everybody here knows, but, and you might have seen it flash up actually, the Always Coca-Cola,
Yep.
the little Always that goes over the top that we all know really well. Tell us that story.
Okay, so I was hired at Code because I needed a computer. And that's when they were transitioning all their files from actual artwork on a board to computer files. And so I got the job because I knew how to do that. Not because I was a designer or a great designer or anything like that. It was, you know how to do this. We need people, we need bodies to do that. So that's what I was hired to do. So a couple months into that, I hated it because I wasn't being creative. I was just recreating other people's artwork. So I kind of took the initiative to get to know the art directors and brand directors on the floor in the department, and through that realized all the design work was being done by outside design firms. So when I heard about this Always Coca-Cola campaign coming up and this project for the Always Coca-Cola logo, I just said to myself, I could do that. And so I stayed late one night, did a couple options, mounted them on a blackboard, snuck into the guy's office that was in charge of the project, because I knew he had a presentation the next day to the higher-ups. And he had a stack of blackboards probably this high on his desk, because he had like 2 or 3 different design firms working on it. I slid mine in the middle. Next day he comes and goes, And actually, overnight, I started thinking, crap, he doesn't know that I did that. If they do pick one of mine, they're not gonna know who did it. So I went in the next morning, got there early, and when he got there, I said, look, I'm sorry I did this. If you want to take him out, you can. He's like, no, don't worry about it, leave him in, we'll see what happens. So he came back a couple hours later, he goes, they picked yours.
I mean, you're 23.
Yeah.
I mean, you must have been like spinning from excitement.
I was pretty happy.
So how far out did their agency reach go? Were they pulling people from Metro Atlanta and beyond?
They pulled in people from all over the world.
And they grabbed this 23.
I don't know who specifically on that project, but.
They must have known this is the guy that worked for the Container magazine.
Yes.
They can tell.
Yes.
This is incredible.
Yes.
He understands packaging.
Oh, yeah.
That's incredible.
So it was a funny little, that logo was only supposed to be for the can. And because they had a whole separate ad agency working on the TV campaigns and the print ads, which they didn't even use that logo because they were already working separately from that. And so we put that Always logo on the can, and then next thing you know, it's on other pieces of packaging, and then it's on point of sale, and then it just kind of took off. People grabbed it all over the world, and I think there's a slide that shows it in several different languages. It's still out there all over the world.
Wow, that's cool. So that obviously empowered you, right? But then you still ended up,
It showed me the value of initiative.
but only survive another 6 or 7 years at Coke. You couldn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
is that the right way to phrase it? Survive?
Yeah, there were good days and bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's any corporation.
Right. So you leave Coke, and then where do you go?
Actually, I've been at Coke for 8 years and felt like it was time for a change. Looking back, I think I should have left after about 5 years, just from where my career was at that point. But we decided after we were pregnant with our daughter, and we were like, let's let Coke pay for that. And so after she was born, and everything was cool with her, I just started putting my name out to recruiters, and I got recruited to a .com company back in 2000 that was taking over the world, buying up all these little web design shops all over the world, and they have become a massive 14,000 employee worldwide company called March 1st. They did a Super Bowl ad. They had incredible office furniture and pool tables and game machines in the office and all the best. So I took the money, went there, and then realized they don't have clients yet, and never did. 10 months later, they shut their doors, and I'm on the street with no severance, nothing.
And a new baby.
And a new baby, and no health care.
Okay.
So that's when my freelance really kicked into high gear.
Well, it's funny because you guys probably know this, but typically as the economy takes a downturn, entrepreneurship rises. And I don't know if you know this, but when you spend a lot of your time in conversations with entrepreneurs, you feel like everybody's an entrepreneur. But when you look at the data, startups are on the big decline right now. Despite co-working hubs and all these things popping up, this is it's been on more of a decline now than it has been in the last 10, 15 years. And so you're at a time where you're desperate.
Oh yeah.
So you walk into freelance.
Walk into freelance, and about 6 months in, we had lunch with some people from after church one day, and there was a new couple there. Briefly spoke with him. He told me he was creative director somewhere, and I didn't really understand what he said. But he called me a couple of weeks later and said, "Hey, I'm working on trying to get a catalog out. I know you're looking for freelance. Would you be interested in helping?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll take anything." So he was like, "Oh, and by the way, I'm putting in my 2-week notice. If you're interested, you could probably take the job after I leave." And I'm like, "This sounds promising." So I went. There was a company over in Kennesaw called Brigade Quartermasters. They've been around for 20-something years, and they sold tactical gear to the military and police, and people who thought they were military and police. So I went in, he left. They gave me the job, or offered me the job, and I said, "I'll be glad to stay and take this job." But as part of that, I'm going to rebrand you. Because
You
they,
telling them this.
yeah, I told them that, because they've been in business for 20 years. You know, they had achieved, but what they had as a logo and brand identity, if anything, was hurting them more than helping them. I mean, it was just something they pieced together over time. So they were like,
Was it the one with the gladiator on it or something like that?
yeah, it was a medieval archer, actually.
Okay.
So I did actually an internal interview with everybody in the company. There's hundreds of employees. And the first question was, what is the logo? The owner was the only one who knew. So they agreed to let me change the brand identity.
You did everything.
I did everything. Changed the logos, the tagline, everything, catalog design, everything. For about 10 years, they had been averaging around 20 million a year revenue. After we launched the brand identity, within 2 years, it had tripled. And that's the only thing that had changed.
Yeah. Wow. And that was your first time doing a full.
That was my first time after leaving Coke, doing totally on my own a brand identity. That told me this works, I can do it, I can do it for anybody. If I can do it for this company, I can do it for anybody.
And you're barely 30-ish.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
So
So at that point, you realize I'm onto something here.
I'm onto something. I don't want to stay in a company. This conference room is called the gun room.
Literally guns on the
Yeah,
wall.
guns everywhere.
Okay.
Yep. So I didn't want to tick anybody off. So no, I just felt like it was time for me. If I'm going to do it, I need to do it now. So I left there and actually retained them as a client on a retainer and started my own thing in 2005.
Wow. So you've been doing this for a good while. I mean, 13 years plus.
13 years.
So now you're an entrepreneur and have been for 13 years.
Yeah.
Maybe tell it before we kind of jump into some questions maybe about brand identity and
Yeah.
all that. What do you feel like is the biggest win and maybe the biggest loss and what you might have learned from those?
Well, obviously the biggest win is doing the identity for Fresh Start Cherokee in the circuit. I mean, come on.
It goes without saying.
I would say besides that, the biggest win has been getting the redesign for Holiday Inn, the hub at Holiday Inn. And the way I got that is kind of a fun story. I had created a brand identity for a local barbecue restaurant in Marietta called Dave Poe's Barbecue. And they didn't have a ton of money to spend, and but they allowed me creative freedom to trust me, which that's a big deal for any designer, is the more you trust them, the better they will do. I mean, it's a fact. So anyway, he trusted me. I kind of went hog wild with his identity and put it out in the store. His business did really well, but shortly after we launched it, the global brand director for Holiday Inn took his family there to eat. And he loved everything that was there, and he asked him, who does your brand identity? And of course, Dave Poe goes, Tom. Just Tom. So fortunately, he gave him my phone number. He called me, came in, went through the whole song and dance of, talking to 14 different corporate VPs at Holiday Inn about coming on to help them with this new project where they were combining their cafe, their restaurant, and their bar all into one open lobby concept. So I didn't know this till about a year after we finished the project, but they had interviewed me up against other bigger firms. I'm just one person firm. They had interviewed some of the top local restaurant design firms, specifically targeted for that, and I got it. So that was a big win for me.
And that's the hub, if you guys might have seen that fly through. All right, so
What was the other part of the question?
So I wanted to ask about loss, but I figured you just wanted to gloss over that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Loss is
In terms of like business or business.
yeah. there was one loss that turned into a positive that comes to mind. This was about 4 years ago, I think. Actually, Brian Stockton contacted me. He's head of economic development for Woodstock.
You were his greatest loss.
Yes. Since then, no, he had met me through Reformation and asked me to come in and talk to him and his team about the Green Prince identity. And so went through that, met with his team and all that stuff, and that actually didn't work out. It went to someone else. And so I was kind of bummed, because at that point, all I had was Reformation as a local client, and I never really thought local clients as an option for making this work. So that was kind of a bummer. But then, I don't know, 6 months, a year later, he called me to do the downtown Woodstock idea, because he liked what he saw in the other meetings, and so that's how I got the downtown Woodstock meeting, by not getting the Green Prince.
Nice.
done.
Great.
So,
You guys seen the big black W, right?
yep,
With the
railroad tracks.
railroad tracks, colored railroad tracks going around. Okay, so speak more specifically to brand identity. So
Okay.
I think for a lot of us, we think of branding or brand identity, and the first thing that comes to mind is logo. Logo design.
Right.
It's the same thing, right?
Not the same thing. Just to be kind of clarified, brand is the whole thing. Brand is the experience, the thoughts that the consumer has, the communication you put forward, it's the way it's customer service, it's all that combined. As our friend Brad Banks likes to say, it's the why. I like to say that brand identity is the why not. Because to me, brand identity is the front door to the store or the restaurant. It's the package sitting on the shelf that says, you need to try this. It makes a connection, and that's why I say, like in that quote you took from something I read on my website, that brand identity or brand value takes time, because it's the accumulation of what you're building as a brand. Brand identity is instant. So like I said earlier, this whole exercise we went through before, people have that long to make a decision. You've got to be instant in helping them make that decision through emotions.
You're basically graphically communicating.
Graphically,
Emotions.
with words.
Words.
To me, that's sometimes designers will forget about what they're actually saying in the design. So that's why I've always included words. That's part of my background as well.
Yeah. So you now, when you build a full brand, it's much bigger than just here's colors, here's the design, here's the feel. It's wording, it's terminology, it's language, and that's what you call a brand story.
Yeah, well, to me, the brand story is, oh, I got really loud, didn't I?
Passion.
The brand story. The brand story is, it's more than a tagline. It's just kind of the foundation of who the brand is and how it connects with people. The whole brand identity is that, and the logos, and the other graphic elements, and the colors, and the typography, all of that working together to communicate. For lack of a better word, those core 3 words that you're trying to communicate. You got to get all that working together to do it.
And I think if I could say just personally, I think that's part of what makes you good at what you do and valuable, because it's more than just the graphic, the visual. So if you guys look on the wall here, you see these 3 posters. It's part of our tagline for Fresh Start Cherokee, right? But what's interesting about the words dig, grind, and hatch, not only do they carry or capture this idea of an entrepreneur digging into their work and grinding out with ideas and then hatching out this idea, but he also brought in the history of our county. And so if you look at dig, it's focused, you can't see it now, but it's focused with a poster on the gold mining industry here in Cherokee County back in the early 1800s.
That's what brought people here originally, yeah.
And
Other
then-
than the people who are already here, but you know,
Right.
that's a different story.
And then the grinding with the mills here in Cherokee County, which were a big part of our economy at one point. And then Hatch. I think at one point, the poultry capital.
Poultry capital of the world at one point. Right after, or during World War II, post-war. From what I've heard or researched, there
Yeah.
were billboards when you entered Cherokee County.
Really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, my point there is there's obviously another skill set involved with going beyond just the visual and the design and bringing in this history and language. And where do you feel like that came from, Tom? I mean, how did you discover you were good at that?
I think it just developed as I was, it's probably part of my studying at UGA for advertising, because in advertising it is image and word together. But as you transition into just design focus, it's easy for a lot of designers to forget the whole picture.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it came from. And just to address this, one of the keys to me for any successful brand identity is being authentic to who you are, who the brand is. If you pretend to be something you're not, and you sell people with a brand identity, and then they get in to realize the brand is not what the brand identity said, you've lost them forever, because they feel rejected or slighted.
Yeah.
So to me, that was part of saying, yes, this is Cherokee County, this is where we've come from, but this is where we're going. And that's, to me, that's the whole idea behind a fresh start in Cherokee.
So you have I've had a privilege, and our team has had the privilege a couple times to sit in on I guess an idea session or a brainstorming session that seems to be unique to Tom's design process. But without, giving away too much of your cards, being in that process seems to be something that you've kind of made your niche, if you will. Why is it important to have a process attached to your brand design and for both for your own identity as a brand, but also for your client?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's unique to me. A lot of designers, design firms have processes. They're probably, in the big picture, somewhat similar. This is just my process that I've developed over these 28 years. And it started at Coke. When people talking about Coke, I say, well, it was my MBA branding, because I learned from some of the top branding people all over the world. But I think there's an image in the Cherry Coke project, just like a lot of image boards of crazy looking, like, everything from skaters and hip hop and all that stuff. So that's, I was working on the Cherry Coke rebrand in 1993, 94, somewhere in there. And the head of that project was an incredibly smart brand marketing guy. He went to Yale, he's just smart. He was the first guy to ever say to me, before you ever start doing anything, you need to get to know the consumer. And so we did this whole ethnographic study of teenagers around the world at that time. And so of course, we didn't have the internet. I had to go to these bookstores all around Atlanta to find magazines from all over the world that were targeting teenagers. So out of that, we pulled out these 5 different subcultures at the time. Grunge was one of the boards. So what we figured out was grunge was in what we call the mall phase at the time. I don't know if you remember shopping malls that used to exist. But we figured if it was in the mall, it's already passé. Because people have already adopted it, and it's on its way out. So the image in the middle, we call it industrial at the time, because we didn't know what to call it. But there's people in there with tattoos and just all kind of crazy stuff going on, which this is middle of the 90s, nobody had tattoos then. But look at it now. So we figured out from that, or I realized, you can tell where things are going. So to me, that's part of my process on every brand, is to not only get to know the consumer, but get my clients to realize this isn't about them, the client, it's about the people you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
So I have what I call my magic suitcase, which is pictures up here. So I bring that into my client meetings as part of the process to get them involved for a couple different reasons. To let them know. One thing that I've also realized over the years working with clients is sometimes a lot of clients think they have to help me design something. By going through this process, they get a creative outline, input by helping select my image board that kind of serves as my palette for the design work. So that's part of the value of the process.
And verbalizing those ideas out loud as a company, as a team helps.
Yeah, before, you've been through it enough to know that before we did the magic suitcase, we did the whiteboard session with kind of the 3-word exercise type stuff. We dig even deeper than that. But that helps me know who they are, who they think the brand is, and who the brand really is. Because if I'm working with a company, I like to pull people into those meetings that are not just the executive team. I want to pull in the people in the warehouse, the janitor, the low-level customer service person, because they all know the brand from a different point of view. And I need all that point of view, because that helps me get to what's authentic.
So, being an entrepreneur and having a home office,
Yes.
but also a family.
Yes.
So what role or how do you feel like your wife, your 2 kids have shaped and motivated you as an entrepreneur?
Well, there's no way in the world I could do any of this without my wife, because she takes care of everything else, period. So there's no way in the world that I could do this. Now, I mean, the benefit is I have flexibility that I would have, in a corporate position or whatever. But, as far as my wife, there's no way I could do it without her. And my kids, they're my kids, I love them, and I do it for her and for them.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's something you might have learned as an entrepreneur from your kids?
I think it's valuable to, just from a strictly entrepreneurial position, to be in a position where you can kind of dictate your own personal time better. That it's good for helping and raising kids. Because you can ask my wife, when I was at Coke, I was not involved as much as I should have been. Couldn't be. I was either commuting for 2 hours a day, and I was working all hours, just deadlines.
Right.
So to me, that's the positive. And there's, I can't, my kids and my wife are my sounding boards. It's like, what do you think of this? What do you see? If I show you this, what does it look like? There's nothing better than a kid's reaction to tell you right away.
It's hard to act.
Well, they just, does this look like a beer bottle? No, it looks like a giraffe. It's going to be that quick. And
Make you feel that big.
yeah, it's good feedback.
Yeah. I heard a guy say something about his how his wife views him, when it comes to like his work or his passion, and he said that nobody's more proud of him than his wife, but she's also not impressed.
Yes.
And I feel like that's a good balance. Like she knows the real you, she knows you're gifted. Nobody would support more, but she's also like, all right.
There's plenty of times that I show her something, she's like, no. I'm not doing it.
Honest feedback, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's 100 more questions I could think of, and there's another 12 on my page, and we don't have time. So
Okay.
I want to turn it over to you guys. We got 15 minutes or so or less. So if you have a question on anything, just shout it out, and we'll try to
Hey,
get
do
time
I
to answer.
have 1 minute
Sure.
before we do that? I brought some notes, and this is just to share with entrepreneurs that I feel like is something that really, it's just my experience for 28 years, and I think designers who know me have asked me to write a book, which I haven't had anywhere near the time to even do that yet, but I just thought I'd share these with you today. Hopefully they help you. But the first one is, if you're a startup or an entrepreneur or running a small company, your logo is not your baby. It is not your child. It is just a graphic that either you created yourself or somebody created it for you just to get the business going. If you didn't hire a professional designer to help you with it, it might be hurting you more than it's helping you. It is not, it should not be an emotional attachment for you. It should be an emotional attachment for your customer. That's one quick one. That was that. If you have a business problem that you're trying to solve, it is going to be way better to have a designer on the front end of the problem than at the back end. Traditionally, people, they get in the conference room and they go, we've got this problem in sales or this problem in customer service or whatever, and they kind of figure out what they're going to do, and then they go, at the tail end, they go, oh, we need a designer to put it all together. Well, the strength of the designer, anybody creative, is their capacity for empathy. Designers always put themselves, or should always put themselves in the other person's shoes and think, how do we help this person solve that problem? So one really great example of that is Apple. Steve Jobs brought designers to the front end when he came back to Apple, and it changed the company forever. So, also, if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing a startup and you're creating a brand identity or anything like that, nobody cares about your favorite color. What you should care about is what is your customer's favorite color, and what does that color communicate? So, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but it's not what or how it looks, but why it looks. Certainly. So this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about emotions, but I found this interesting. I actually recently found this out that there's a neuroscientist at USC who also works for the institute that created the cure polio. Anyway, he's a Salk Institute. He's a brilliant neuroscientist. He studies the brain, and he's worked with people who have had brain injuries to the parts of the brain that control emotions. And what they've discovered is that's the only part of the brain that's had injury. These people can still think logically, and they can function in all ways except they have no control or they don't have emotions. They can't make decisions. So he has done further study and concluded you have to have emotions in a critical part of any decision. So to me, that just validates even more that emotional connection is so valuable for a brand or business or anything.
The consumer decides.
Yeah, it's an emotional decision.
Yeah.
And if you look at the basic emotions, it's fear, anger, that kind of stuff, but it's also surprise and joy and anticipation and trust. And that's what I'm trying to get with every brand I do. I want to create anticipation, trust, and maybe a little bit of pleasant surprise and joy.
That's good.
So, that's just
Great.
quick.
Yeah, thanks for going through that. That's
Sure.
good. All right, what questions do you guys have?
So I got one. If you're successful 3 out of every 10 times as a baseball player, you're gonna be at the All-Star game.
Yeah.
You come up with all these different ideas. How do you get emotionally attached to the fact that, okay, I'm gonna design, what's your success rate, so to speak? Is it 1 out of 10? Is it 1 out of 5? And how do you kind of step into that emotionally where you go, okay, I'm gonna come up with 8 ideas today and they're gonna get shot down? How do you kind of temper yourself with the failure side, rate
Sure.
of whatever your business is?
Yeah. My goal is to about 1,000. And today, but when I usually get to the phase where I'm starting to show stuff to a client that I've created, a lot of designers, like what I would call master designers, huge firms, they will come in with one solution because they feel like they've been hired to come up with the solution and they present that. I usually include more options just because I still have to helping the client figure out what is the best direction. So I like to include them like I do with the image board into the process. But if I show them 3 or 4 or 5 options, they're not seeing the literally 20, 30 other options that I've already gone through actually on screen that I've already weeded out myself and said, this won't work because that will never work with a sign or a package or whatever, or it doesn't communicate quick enough. So I also think there's other factors that I've learned over the years. Once something is implemented, whether total success or failure, it's not always independently up to that. Like I mentioned earlier with the brigade thing, I would never say it was totally the brand identity that helped them increase revenue. There were other factors, but I know that it helped. So.
Yes.
Since it's just you right at your company, right?
Yep.
It's just you, how do you balance, scheduling your day and having new business versus working on projects? What does that look like?
It looks like getting up at 5 some days. It looks like, working till midnight some days. Depends on what else is going on with the family. Usually the last question at night to my wife is, what do we have tomorrow? What's going on? Because I'm already thinking, I've got all this, and this to do. One of the decisions I had to make fairly early on, when I actually went out on my own, my original thought was, I'm going to start this, I'm going to add people, I'm going to grow a firm, yada, yada, yada. Came really close to hiring someone about a year into it, and took this person and his wife out to eat, and then laid in bed all night looking at the ceiling going, what am I doing? I've just added a whole other family to support. And so at that point, I kind of backed out of that, going down that road, which actually worked out for him really well too. So over the years, I thought, I might could make more money if I went down that road, but I would be less fulfilled and have less flexibility, because then I would become a manager of people, salesman, that type of stuff. So I've just chosen to stay with, I'm doing the work, so I've had to market myself as the expert who actually charges you more for my expertise, which is really challenging for any creative person who's pricing and figuring that out. So.
How did you determine who your target customer was going to be?
That's a good one.
And we're out of time.
Yeah. For years, I used to joke with other designers that my target market was people who were not spending their own money. But when you're working in a local market, that's really hard to do, especially if you're working with startups and small business. So my target is actually beverage companies and food and beverage. But as I tell my clients all the time, just because your target is really narrow and focused, doesn't mean you're not going to get other customers. Because people are attracted to people who know what they're about. And so, of course, by targeting beverages, by getting Reformation, I got Downtown Woodstock, I got Fresh Start Cherokee, I got Athens Post Real Estate, and it's just boom, 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 boom. And I base that off my Coke experience, which is why I picked food and beverage. So.
You were talking about working with Brigade, that was several years ago, 10 years. things have changed now, we've got more avenues. How is the new avenues of social media, how much is that affecting your process? Where are you fitting in with some of that?
To me, it's just another touch point. I mean, it's definitely something I have to be aware of and think through and think, how can I produce an identity that's going to work well on social media, whether it's the small profile picture, the larger cover images, or if they're using it, you know, in a promotion on post and that type of stuff. So to me, it's social media is replacing the print ad. It's replacing the catalog. It's, you know, that type of stuff. But to me, it's still, how do you communicate that brand identity, no matter whether it's a truck with a vehicle route or an Instagram post. I don't know if that answered.
Yeah, I'm just curious as your thoughts.
Yeah.
Do you find like you spend more time on Instagram than you would like on Twitter?
For me personally,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
But it varies for clients. If I'm thinking about it for a client, I have to figure out where are they most active,
Right.
and maybe where should they be more active.
Okay. What other? I know there's a question here in the middle.
Yeah, working by yourself, if you get creatively stuck, do you have people you bounce ideas off of, or?
Yeah, I have people that I've worked with for years. I have one guy that helped me found Small Town Creatives, and he actually used to work for me at Brigade. But he's an illustrator, and he lives in Canton, and we Skype almost daily, like we're in the next cube each other, because that's what we were at one point. We just, so sometimes we'll like call each other and say, hey, what do you think of this? Or we'll just call and talk about whatever TV shows we've been watching while we work. You know, so it kind of helps with the solitude.
It's true. I mean, your basement office is large enough. You could probably build him a section.
Yeah, probably. Don't tell him that.
Okay.
So you design so many things that are like globally recognized. Is it weird to see your work like in random places? Like, and is that sort of shock you? You've done so many times with the whole search thing came back.
Yeah.
Weird to see that.
Oh, yeah. He said I've done so much stuff that's global and out in the world, and how do I feel when I see it? You know, I don't know. People ask me that because I mean, you know, it's a good feeling to see it actually in the market, but to me, it's like, well, I expected it to see it in the market because I did it for it to be in the market. And sometimes I see stuff and go, it shouldn't have been that way. Or, you know, it could have been a little bit different or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. Most designers are their own worst critic. So it's hard to look at something and say, I wish I had made that W just a little bit thinner. You know.
Right.
So.
There's another question here in the middle.
For a nonprofit or a small business with limited resources, you talk a lot about, the importance of brand identity.
Yep.
Where do you suggest an entity like that begin, or where do they focus when, going out for?
I'm so glad you asked that because my personal opinion is if you're starting a nonprofit, small business, anything, and you do not have a budget or funding to bring in a designer, if you have a name of the entity or the brand or whatever, just do a simple word mark. Just do something extremely simple. Don't try to figure out a logo that explains everything. Keep it simple because people are going to build meaning into it. If you keep it simple to start with, when you do have a budget to bring in a designer, you can start with that. So much easier than having to retrain people from something that might not be as good as it could be. Does that help?
Are you aware of a resource? I've used Logo Genie and some sites like that. I mean, what's your opinion on stuff like that?
So,
I just,
So let me ask you
Go
this.
ahead.
What do you do?
I have an insurance agent.
Okay, so if someone could just go online and buy insurance without calling you, how would you feel?
Recommend.
So, I mean, I know that's the trend, and it's, if you got on designer message boards, it's not pretty when you hear about those type places, because, you know, those people aren't putting any thought into who you are in reality and who your customer is. They're taking what little you give them and saying, oh, I don't know, you sell shoes, let's do a shoe logo. And that may not be what we need, really. It may be, you know, something more targeted.
That's good. Probably have time for one last question. Yes, ma'am.
So you have been highly successful and designed for a lot of amazing places, but I know as an entrepreneur you have big goals, I'm sure. So what would be your dream job? If you could design for anybody, what would be your dream job?
I've got like a million things run through my head right now. Probably the safe answer would be the Georgia Bulldogs. So,
Would that be a total rebrand?
well,
I mean, color change, right? Obviously.
no. And see, that would be the challenge. How do you redesign a tradition?
Yeah.
I'm not sure you want that job, actually.
No, but it would be a dream job.
That would be interesting. Have you ever considered like actually approaching?
No.
Really?
Well, here's the thing. I suck at marketing myself. You know, cobblers, children have no shoes, that
That's
thing.
true. Right. Mechanics have the worst cars in town.
Majority of my stuff is word of mouth.
And has been for this whole
Yeah.
time.
The only client that I've ever gotten, and not only, I did some marketing, which is why I got to work for the National Zoo, and that was email marketing. The only client that I ever cold called was Reformation. And I should do it more often because that's led to a lot of us.
I was going to say, clearly that works.
Yeah.
Cold
Yeah.
calling still works. Everybody write that down.
Yeah.
Let's take away.
Yeah.
Well, a couple things before we go, but if you guys would give Tom a hand. Thanks so much for your time. I don't know how much time, but a couple minutes after, if you guys want to grab Tom or ask him a question in person, I'm sure he'd be happy to.
Yep.
Stay right there, man.
Okay.
Before we go, I want to share with you guys next month's speaker. All right. So in typical fashion, we try to announce next month at the current one so that you guys can kind of know exclusively who we're going to talk to. We're pretty excited. On August 8th, so mark that on your calendar if you guys want to. It's always the second Wednesday of the month from 11:30 to 1 here at the circuit. And so next month we're going to feature a guy named Ashley Holcomb. So some of you may know him, some of you may not. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's a Cherokee County native. I believe he was a ball ground councilman for 10 years.
Something like that.
I'm looking at Misty, but I think he started when he was pretty young. 22 as a councilman for the city of Ball Ground. He's a member of our board and has been for almost 8 years now. He's been a tremendous value to the community and to Cherokee County. He's been very instrumental in helping us build our Cherokee 75 corporate park out on 92, if you guys haven't seen that, where an Alpha and Adidas are located. Just done all kinds of stuff, and he's so young. I mean, he's like 44 or 45. He's got 5 kids, or maybe 10. I can't keep up. He's a family man. He does incredible work. So he's also an interesting storyteller. So just like Tom and others in the past, we try to bring people that have learned so much about entrepreneurship, and they're willing to tell their story and what they've learned. So if you guys use this code here, Ashley_H, you can get $5 off your tickets for next time. That starts today. So go ahead and pre-register if you can. That code will last 1 week from today. So now's your chance. There's the link. I can leave it there if you want to take a picture. Grab some stickers of Tom's before you go. Grab some business cards. They're really cool. Take those with you. And you guys feel free to enjoy yourself and speak to Tom when you're done. Thank y'all again for everything. We really appreciate it.